Welcome to part 2 of our Monopoly lesson. We've learned a little bit about what it takes to be considered a monopoly. Now we're going to look at how the monopoly chooses its profit maximizing quantity, and with that, of course, the price that goes with it. The price and quantity, as we've learned before, it's a pair. So quantity will end up helping us determine the price and the profits. So a monopolist is considerably different than the perfectly competitive firm. Might seem obvious, but what it means for us is that the monopolist is a price maker compared to what we called a price taker for the perfectly competitive firm. So the monopolist faces a downward sloping demand curve, which has pretty huge implications, right? That means the monopolist, it's not just choosing a quantity and the price is always the same, right? If you if you sell more, the price drops. If you sell less, the price increases because there's a demand curve for the product. And as a monopolist, you control the entire market. So, perfectly competitive firm, it faces a flat demand curve, whereas the monopolist faces a downward sloping demand curve. So the big implications, remember we learned about this in perfect competition. The marginal revenue equals the price for the competitive firm, right? It doesn't matter whether you'd sell a very small amount or a whole lot. If you're the competitive firm, you always face the same price because each firm is so small, they have no impact on the market price. Monopolist, though, that's not the case. The monopolist is the only seller, downward sloping market demand curve. If it wants to sell more, the price is going to drop, right? If you want the quantity to go up, the price is going to drop, right? That's just our standard law of demand. But what that means then is the marginal revenue from selling one more unit doesn't equal the price. Many people, when you first hear that, are a little bit perplexed. But think about it this way. Think about a monopolist that's selling 10 units at $25 a unit. If it wants to sell 11 units, it has to drop the price. Let's say it has to drop it to $24 a unit. So your first reaction will be, then the marginal revenue is $24 because you're lowering the price to $24 and you make the extra sale. But if you lower the price to $24, it's not just that extra customer who's getting the product for $24. Every other customer used to be paying $25. Now they pay $24. So your marginal revenue has to take that into account. Yes, you're making the extra sale, but every other customer you had is now paying a little bit less as well. So the marginal revenue will be lower than the price for a monopolist. But we still use the same profit maximizing condition that we learned about. Marginal revenue equals marginal cost. The one thing that's different, because marginal revenue doesn't equal price, then there was a special condition for perfect competition where we said price equals marginal cost, right? And that's the profit maximizing condition. That's not the case for a monopolist. For a monopolist, marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That is the profit maximizing condition. We can't simplify it at all like we could with perfect competition. So the monopolist uses the market demand curve, help determine the price and quantity, and from there they get what the marginal revenue curve. We've talked about marginal revenue several times. I hope that this definition comes up and you're thinking, oh, I know this. If that's the case, that's wonderful. If it's not the case, probably need to go back and refresh yourself on marginal revenue and marginal cost. Anytime you see the word marginal, right, what should be coming into your head? Additional. Marginal revenue, it's the additional revenue a monopolist earns when it sells one extra unit of an item. So let's consider an example. All right, we've got a demand curve here. Take a moment, and I'd like you to try to figure out the total revenue and the marginal revenue for this monopolist. Pause it and go ahead and fill in this chart. Okay, I hope you paused it, completed this chart, at least took your best shot at it. Total revenue, price times quantity, right? So when nothing is sold, total revenue is zero. Or if you charge a price of zero, the total revenue is zero. What about in between? Well, 1 unit at $5.50, that's pretty obvious. 2 units, $5 each, $10. 3 units, $4.50 is $13.50, and so on. It's just price times quantity to get the total revenue. Marginal revenue is the change in total revenue when you sell one more unit. So when we sell that first unit, we get $5.50 in extra revenue. When we sell the extra unit, we go from $5.50 to $10. So the difference is $4.50. When we sell the third unit, we go from $10 to $13.50, so we get an extra $3.50, and that trend continues. 2 things to note. One, eventually the marginal revenue becomes negative. Why? Because the total revenue starts to drop after a certain point. 6 units is where our total revenue is maximized. After that, the total revenue starts to drop as you lower the price, right? And we remember this, if you remember back to the elasticity section, the demand curve has portions of it that are elastic and portions that are inelastic. Total revenue increases when you lower the price on the elastic portion of the demand curve, and it decreases on the inelastic portion of the demand curve. So that's the first thing, is that the marginal revenue does become negative at some point. The second point, what we mentioned, but we want to confirm, the price does not equal the marginal revenue, right? For the second unit, $5 is the price, you get $4.50 in extra revenue. For the fifth unit, $3.50 is the price, you get $1.50 in extra revenue. For the sixth unit, $3 is the price, 50 cents in extra revenue. So marginal revenue doesn't equal the price. It's always lower than the price, but that just confirms what we had discussed before and kind of the rationale that why does marginal revenue not equal price? So if we look at this particular graph, we see that revenue is maximized at 6 units and $18. Right? And that's where marginal revenue would be 0 at exactly that point, right? It's negative if you try to produce a 7th unit. If your goal was to maximize revenue, the monopolist would want to sell 6 units. But that's not the goal of the monopolist, right? What is the goal of the firm? It is not to maximize revenue, it's to maximize profits. So unless the cost is 0, if the cost is 0, then marginal revenue equals marginal cost equals 0 would be the profit maximizing condition. You would want to sell 6 units. But if the marginal cost is greater than that, you'd likely be seeing something different. So the monopolist wants to choose the quantity so that marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Right? That's the typical profit maximizing condition. Find the quantity where the marginal revenue equals marginal cost, or as we discussed before, where the marginal profit is 0. You want to keep selling extra units as long as you keep making more money. The moment that you don't make any more money, then you stop if you're the firm. Okay, here's another chart for you to fill out. This chart will be on Blackboard for you, so you can print it there, or you could just write this into your notes. Go ahead, take a moment, pause this, and attempt to fill this out yourself before we go through it together. Okay, I hope you paused it. Total revenue, price times quantity. Pretty straightforward, price times the output. So anything times 0, of course, is 0. 1 times 160, 2 times 140, 3 times 120, all the way through 8 times 20. Marginal revenue. It's the change in total revenue when you sell one more unit. So it's 160. 280 minus 160 is 120. 360 minus 280 is 80. 400 minus 360 is 40. 400 minus 400 is 0. 360 minus 400, that's negative 40, and these are negative as well. Total cost was given. So what's marginal cost? It's just the change in total cost when you sell one more unit. 80 310 minus 260 is 50, 20, 40, 50, 70, 130, and 180. So from here, what output should the firm produce? Right? Take a moment, pause it if you need to. If you can't find it immediately, go ahead and pause it. I'd like you to try to figure out what output this firm should produce. Okay. What you should be looking for, right? What is the profit maximizing condition of the firm? It's to produce the output where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Well, we see when we produce that fourth unit, marginal revenue equals 40, marginal cost equals 40. Profits maximized when you sell 4 units. And actually here, if you sell 3 units, maximizes profits as well. Because selling that fourth unit, you really don't care. Right? You get 40 in extra revenue, you incur 40 in extra costs, you're just as happy either way. Looking at the case here, what's the 360 minus 330 or 400 minus 370? Both of the times the profit's $30. If you look at the difference between total revenue and total cost at any other spot, it'll be lower than $30, right? This condition maximizes profits where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Any other spot on here, and if you want to verify, just start to look, total revenue minus total cost, it will always be less than 30, except at 3 units and 4 units of output in this example.